Bateman's Bay, situated at the entrance of the Clyde River. Bateman's Bay, once a timber town, with the sounds of the sawmills whistle that the townsfolk set their watch by. Because of the timber that grew here, enabled shipbuilders to move from Port Nelligan once the government released land in the 1860s. Many splendid ships built at the bay and sailed the quiet waters of the Clyde River. The sound of the bullock team's chains and the crack of the teamster's whip and the morning mist rising from the river brought early pioneers to settle with their families. Today, Friday the 12th of February 2016, we're talking to one of Bateman's Bay's local residents who is descended from such pioneers, Mr. Stephen Dunn. Okay. Stephen, we're standing on the north side and I see the road near the restaurant across there. Now, was this where the cars and vehicles used to come down to catch the punt across the Clyde?
There's the remains of two ferry ramps there. One's now a good new boat ramp, the other one's still a bit old. And if you go across the river to the southern side, you'll see where the big punt is closest to the bridge, the ramp there, where the red bus is behind it. That's one of the original big punt ramps. And up further is a new boat ramp where the little ferry punt used to work out of.
Now, there's a lot more buildings here on the right-hand side. What were they? What are those buildings used for?
Oh, back over here, there's the oyster farmers' sheds are all over there at Ladders Point. And then the green building there is a fishery shed. And that's the side of where Fanning Sawmill was. It burnt down in 1952 or 53, I think. And there used to be a remains of an old wharf there when I was a kid. It was half burnt down.
Right. Yeah. And we look further up the river on the right hand side, we can see a lot of bush still.
That's Barclays Island, or Bud Island they call it now. My grandmother's brother Arch Barclay had a house on that. It's long gone, but his parents lived straight up there at a place called Shores. It was. They had a house there. They had 16 children there.
Yeah.
And then back along to your right was Moonlight Flat. Very good flat for Clyde River oysters. A lot of oyster farmers have got leases on that flat there.
And what sort of
ship the oysters off that.
What sort of oyster, were they always farming or?
Oh, years ago they dived for them and they collected the oyster shells and burnt them. The live oyster made the best slime apparently, and then they nearly wiped the oysters out and they got more from New Zealand, Sydney Rocks oysters from New Zealand, and restarted. Then they found out they were such a good delicacy, good to eat. That's where they become more famous for now.
And gold, is this gold country?
Oh, there's gold diggings over there at Ladders Point, the next one over at Rocky Point, a few other creeks all the way up the river, all the way to the Shallow Crossing. There's a lot of diggings all the way up the Clyde River.
Oh, what about Nelligan?
Yeah, a lot of diggings around Nelligan, gold diggings around Nelligan.
And the gold,
too hard to explain all the areas.
Yeah, and the gold that came down from Aralura and across from Nerragunda would have come down to the steamers and come out along this river here.
Oh, I don't know, I suppose so, yeah. A bit before my time, mate, yeah. The photo on the left top, there's a hand-operated ferry punt here in the 1900s. There's no ferry approaches them days, it's straight up onto the beach. Yeah. And the other one here is a horse team waiting on the northern side of the river. That looks like the 8-car punt my grandfather built. You can just see Fanning's Mill in the background. The other one is a 8-car punt my grandfather built again. Yeah, and the other one is we should go down to the bottom because it's the first steam punt that come here for a while in 1930s, and then later, I can't remember the date, but this other one, the big steam punt that was here last. And you can see the 8-car punt here near the first coal bunker parked behind it, and these are vehicles waiting here, and they got the gates up now because there was a priest, a reverend from Badalla, drove into the river and his family got drowned. And on this one you can see there's no gates on the ferry punt, so it's before that. And there's a big coloured one of the big ferry punt coming across. That must be late 40s or early 50s because the piers on the bridge are just being built. And here we have the punt and the bridge being built with trucks and stuff on the thing. And Mrs. Corner's shop can just be seen in the back left-hand corner of the photo.
Stephen, I'm looking at the Pier Restaurant. When was that built, do you know?
Keith and Joan Shepherd built it in about 1970, I think. Keith gave the order for Dad for the timber, and we cut it at Narragunda Mill when we was working at Narragunda Sawmill in 1970. And Keith and Joan built it all themselves. He's pretty good man, Keith. He started a lot of things, good fisherman.
And on this side where we're standing now, near the old Punt Road, was there any shipbuilding or pleasure craft building here?
There was a boat built just here in the 1960s by an old gentleman, I can't remember his name now. I think he died before he finished it. It was called the Clyde.
Which was another name that they used?
About 33 foot it was.
Stephen, we're looking at some old photographs of early days when Batemans Bay was settled. Look, this one here looks to be possibly late 1800s. What's your feeling on them?
Yeah, I reckon it's been 1900 or so, yeah.
Yeah.
The ISN company shed's not built in it. I think that was built in the early 1900s, 1913 or 1908 or something, I'm not sure exact date.
Yeah.
And the next one looks like the remains of Guy's Mill, first sawmill on the foreshore of Batemans Bay. And the other one you can see, it's Ladmore's house and Fanning's house and Fanning's log punt in it. That's over here, over the other side of the south side of the river at Smoky Point. Yeah. And that looks like Ladmore's bakery there behind the used to be the ferry ramp. Yeah.
And that's all part of the main area on the south side of the river now, isn't it?
Yeah.
The old buildings that are no longer there, that we now have motels in their place.
Yeah, there's motels there now, yeah. That is where they built the Batemans Bay during the war. And you can see the sleepers, there's some sleepers there on there where the boat probably loaded them out on the northern side, but mostly they loaded the sleepers on the southern side of the river.
And
that's before even the bridge approaches, that's 1940.
And this here is just about where we're standing now, isn't it? It's this area?
Yeah, or back, we're a bit further west. Yeah. And that's the start of the bridge there. Yeah, and that's, you can't see the ramps, but there's a ferry ramp will be over to the left, to the right, I mean. And this other one on the bottom is an opening of the bridge. I can remember that day, I was there with my grandfather.
And what year was that?
1956, 21st of November as far as I know. And that other one's all after they opened the bridge, all the people walking across the bridge, there's a few local people in that photo.
And what part did the school children of the day play in this?
I don't know, I was only 3 years old. We need someone a bit older than me.
Because I
to
see
remember that.
school children in the foreground here.
Yeah,
Possibly the schools walked across the bridge first, maybe.
maybe, I can't remember now. That shows a couple of trawlers, but it's mainly, it shows us the old coal bunker where the steamers used to unload the coal for the dredges.
And was it used for any other purpose apart from coal?
No, only for coal. They used to store the coal there for the dredges. As far as I know, there was nothing else. Only had a narrow little walkway going out to it.
And
The council put a vehicle access into it in later years. I can remember that.
and when looking at the waterfront now, you see pleasure craft anchored there. We see very few fishing. Is there any fishing trawlers and stuff still here?
No trawlers here now. Only Innes has got one trawler that work out of here now at the moment. There used to be up to 24, 30 boats here apparently on the prawn day, early days on prawning.
And what were they mainly catching?
Mainly prawns. Oh, there was a couple of fish trawlers, Danish seine. A couple of trawlers done Danish seine in them days, but mainly all prawn boats.
So there's a loss of industry here in modern days, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, it's gone now, all the fishing, and the only industry left on the river now is oystering.
Yeah.
Timber industry's all died. It's gone. Yeah.
Stephen, we're looking at photographs now of the past industry here of timber. What can you tell me with these that we're looking at with the horses, with especially here a cart with logs seem to be strapped
well,
under?
That's a horse team with jinker. They're called jinkers, and they underslung the logs. And there was a bloke here at the bay, Mum often talks and Dad talked about him, was Mal Casey. Used to do a lot of logging here for the mills in the early days with the horse team. And the second photo is my grandfather and his brother Angus Shepherd and Malcolm Shepherd. That's at East Lynn. They logged East Lynn and Pebbly Beach sawmill in the 1920s before things got modernised, before the bulldozers took over. Yeah. The other one's a photo of a log at Narragunda when I worked at Narragunda in 1977. They had some big timber down there. There's big logs still in the bush there because it was still virgin bush.
And
Back at Narragunda in 1970.
And what's the purpose of the two saws?
That's a double Canadian, it's called. One's 6 foot saw and the other's a 4 foot 6 saw. Yeah. That's a load of logs coming into Narragunda in the 1970.
And that structure, is that how they winched them off? Or?
Yeah, that's before they had front end loaders. They used to winch them off. Or that's an overhead gantry that was used to lift the logs off and carry the logs into the mill before they had front end loaders.
Yeah, were the mills fuel run or steam run or?
No, all electric, that mill was.
That was electric mill?
All electric, yeah.
Now, a little while back we were talking about the oysters and how you were saying that they used to dredge and dive for them. What can you tell me about the suit that were they used here?
There was quite a few families died from. Rays were the main family that I know, and Templemans I think were another family that dived for the oysters. Yeah, that's
and
Freddie Sebbins there in Timmy's Ray suit. I can remember Timmy when he dived. They put the first coaxial cable across the river in the 1960s. Timmy Ray dived from that using a compressor, blasting the telephone cable in across the river for the Telstra. It'd be PMG them days, yeah.
And that's the old dive suit with the air bell.
Yeah, dive suit, Timmy.
And the legs.
Freddie, I can remember Freddie and another chap in Timmy's Ray's punt with the wind and the air down for Timmy.
Yeah, they would have come.
My father had the Colleen Marie alongside it with a big compressor on it. And the compressor had the Colleen Marie and Timmy Ray's oyster punt hooked together.
Yes.
Blasting the PMG cable across the river. That was be 1962. Yeah.
Now this photo up here,
That's the swimming bars, the old swimming bars.
and we can just
Yeah.
see in the point there,
Yeah, and that's, what's the name? Perry's Mill behind there, and the Church of England to your right. Yeah.
just here. And what did Perry's,
Perry's made every handle that was made, every wooden handle that you use in the tools. And they
okay.
made meat skewers, and they made, what's the name? Insulator pins for the telephone poles when there was all the old copper lines on, before we got to mobile phones.
You're wonderful, aren't you? And was it just men that worked there, or do women work there too?
No, Mum and quite a few other women worked there. I think there was women still worked there till it closed. As far as I know, maybe only in the office some days, but I know the women used to sort all the skewers,
So
and do all the handles, pack all the handles in the bags and boxes, yeah.
So these sawmills over the years sometimes had a terrible accident and burnt down. Were they out of work for long?
I don't know. Well, when Narragunda flooded, we was out of work for 6 weeks because of the floods, because there was no power. But when Fennings Mill burnt down the bottom here in the bottom picture in the 1950s, it closed down. It was never built
It
again.
never rebuilt. But
No, but they built. That's when they rebuilt it. Guys, not guys. It was the same licence. I think Jack Malloy and other chap from Ulladulla, they got the licence and they built it at the top mill up the top of the hill, up above the cemetery, going out of south of the Bateman's Bay.
so going back up to Perry's mill, that was Francis Guy's mill, and he sold that to Perry in 1901.
Yeah, apparently that's right. Yeah.
And Perry's modernised it.
Yeah, and it burnt down a couple of times, and I know my grandfather rebuilt it for £300 or something in 1920, I think it was.
And then to the right and to the left of that mill, the sawmills opened up again.
Yeah, Guys opened another mill up, and it was later Mitchell's mill, up east of the Perry's factory.
Right, and the ships, they would come to which side? To the point, or?
Yeah, there was two wharves. There was a wharf at Mitchell's mill, and there was a wharf at Perry's mill. Yeah, they loaded the timber off.
Yeah. And for a number of years when the mill closed, the Clyde River and Batemans Bay Museum exhibited there, did they? I hear?
I can't remember that. Yeah, they might have. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
And in your younger days when it wasn't working, you guys,
We used to go there sometimes weekends, look around, pinch the skewers for bows and arrows and stuff. Yeah. Lots of kids played in that. There wouldn't be many young kids in Bateman's Bay that haven't played in Perry's Mill on the weekend.
when it was empty, did they ever have barbecues there and dances at all? Or? Can't remember that. Yeah. And this bottom photo here, 1950s, early Bateman's Bay, it just has lots of notes on it pointing out where buildings were at the time.
Yeah, well, you can see the ISN company shed and the sleeper dump. Innes's boat shed's built there with its boats and that. North Street Hospital, Thompson's shop, Haskell's shop, and
First stop,
First stop was Guy's, yeah. And Jack Daly's bootmaker shop. It's there, and there was a hotel there on the corner, but it's been pulled down. Brooks' Hotel. And just make out the school, and the hospital's in North Street, but the arrow's pointing to the wrong place. That's Charles Helmore's house, and you can see the nurses' quarters there, the big two-storey place opposite Blandford.
which is just
There,
here,
just
isn't
there,
it?
back a bit. No, there, the white place. There, that's the nurses' quarters building,
Yeah.
and there were shops underneath it.
And Blandford's was very much loved building in Batemans Bay.
Yeah, Mum worked there for a while too. She worked a lot of places.
Yeah. And what was it? A hotel, guest house?
Yeah, private hotel, didn't have a liquor licence. Yeah, just a private hotel, guest house.
And a lot of passing by people would
a lot
stop. They had
A lot
rooms.
of people come there every year, stop there year in, year out for holidays.
Yeah, excellent. And then this photo here is just more of a modern shot from the air.
Yeah, that's a bit later. The bridge is just starting to be built then. Yeah.
Okay, done. Stephen, we're on the southeastern side of the bridge and the river now, looking across at the main town. We're standing on a park on the north side. Can you remember what was here in your earlier days?
Well, it wasn't here when I was born, but before I was born, apparently this is where they built the Bateman's Bay trawler during the war. Grandfather's brother Bill Dunn was in charge of the building of it. Clancy and Owen, I think, were the builders of it. It was 80 foot or 75 foot. And Dad always told me Bert and Gus Thompson, I think were the names, had a shipyard here and used to build boats here too. Before that, before the war.
So was there any shops here at all?
Can't remember any shops being here. Only Croker's Ice works further up the street there.
And did they bring cargo down here to go on board the ships that used to pull in at all?
Well, I think they had sleepers on this side of the river, I'm not sure.
Right, was there ever a wharf here for the steamers to come across to collect them?
Not on this side. They just loaded off with as far as I know, loaded off with the Flying Foxes.
Oh right, so they actually loaded straight from the bank.
Yeah, as far as I know. I'm not sure. But they didn't load over there on the town wharf. They didn't load the sleepers off the wharf. I can remember the last load of sleepers going out here with my grandfather. Took me down and showed me on the Begalia. They used to slide them out into the water, and then they'd hit the water, and then they'd winch them up onto the boat. They didn't load them by hand onto the boat. It was all Flying Fox, I think, Flying Fox and cranes.
And do you remember in many of the sailing ships that came in, or was that too early?
Too early for me.
What about steamers? Do you remember any of those coming in at all?
I can just remember the dredges coming here. And the Begalia last trip, I can remember its last trip. That was about 1957 or 56 or something. I was only 3 years old. My grandfather took me down and showed me when they loaded the boat.
Right. So did the family come across to the north side very often? Was there any reason to come over here for picnics?
Not a real lot. Only when we used to go out to, Dad went lobstering out at North Head and out Durras Way, Bedley Beach and all them places.
So did they catch, what sort of fish did they actually catch in here, mainly?
It was all prawn trawlers here in early days. Dad had a trawler here, built 3 trawlers. Oh, there's a lot of trawlers here in the 60s. Mostly all prawn trawlers.
So there wouldn't have been too much netting in the river here?
Yeah, there was a lot of local fishermen used to net the river. I can't remember their names now. I have to ask Mum or something who the net fishermen were.
What, mainly for flathead or whiting or?
What's the name? Flathead and bream, stuff like that.
Is there much weed here for blackfish?
Yeah, they used to get a lot of blackfish off the old swimming bars that I know about.
And standing here, whereabouts would the bars be?
The swimming bars is where the wharf is out in front of the Mariners Hotel.
Which is the pink building? the Mariners,
No,
is it?
that's the Esplanade.
Oh. Oh, so it's the yellow.
Yeah, back. Yeah, the yellow building. There.
Yellow wall.
Or back a bit. No, the big grey. The grey.
So standing here, we see a grey roof with a blue surround. That's obviously shops and whatever there.
Yeah, that's where the sleeper dump was.
And where did
That's
the ships pull into?
Yeah, to the town wharf. The town wharf was a lot bigger them days. It was the old wooden thing. It was all rotten when I was a kid.
Yes, you
And
can
it fell.
barely
I think
see
it went away in the flood, and they pulled it down. A bit of it got washed away in the flood.
And
they
that's
pulled it
near
down.
Innes's boat shed, is it?
Near Innes's boat shed, yeah. And the coal bunker was back here further.
So is there any remnants of the coal bunker at all?
Not now anymore, no.
So she's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Now, why did they call it the coal bunker?
That's where they unloaded the coal for the dredges. And the steamers bring the coal down. And it's all full of coal. They only didn't have a drive out. The council put a road so cars could drive out onto it in later years, but when we was kids it only just had a walkway out to it. It was out on the edge of the channel for them. When the dredges come down to dredge the river, when the school was out, we'd rush down to the coal bunker and run out to look at the dredges when we were kids. I can remember doing that.
So was there any cargo actually loaded from the coal bunker, or was that
No, just coal bunker.
strictly coal?
Yeah.
Okay, so the main product that left here went from the other wharf up near Innes's boat shed.
It was all loaded up at the sleepers. It was loaded at the sleeper dump, and Perry's Mill and Mitchell's Mill had wharves, and
Right.
they loaded their products on the boats from there too, on the two wharves there.
And we can just make them out. That's that big complex, the light,
Seneca Reach is
yeah.
where Perry's Mill was,
the light blue
and
complex.
Mitchell's Mill's up a bit further. And they loaded the timber off the wharf here at Fanning's Wharf too, apparently.
Oh, great.
And Dad had the Colleen Marie. He used to tie when he had the trawler in 1962, he used to tie the Colleen Marie up to Mitchell's Wharf them days. It was all sort of rotten them days too, all planks all broken off. You had to watch when you walked over it. It was all in a bad way, state of decay.
So when they actually pulled the old Perry's Mill down, it probably was pretty much had it, was it?
The wharf out the front.
The wharf and the mill when it was taken down.
Oh, the mill was probably still all right. It was pretty sound structure, but the wharf out the front was very rotten. Yeah.
Looking back at the township here closest to the bridge, was there ever any punt access there, or was it always totally on the other side?
Both punt ramps were over on the western side of the bridge. Both punt ramps were there.
So there was obviously two punts were there running.
There was a big punt was running most of the time apparently, but when they got busy, they used to, Christmas time they'd put the little one on too apparently sometimes.
Oh, wonderful. So what do you remember on this side of the bridge? As we're looking across now, is there very much, I think it's just cleared land at the moment. I see trees.
There was always sort of a park, I can remember.
And we see near this wharf here, we see is that a dredge or something? That boat?
That's a barge for the bloke that does the moorings in the river, I think.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
He uses that to put the moorings down.
And was there always that much rock there for the?
No, that was built later.
That was, so it was pretty
Yeah,
much all.
I can't remember when they done that. This rock here was put here in about.
This is the end of part 1. Acknowledgements, Trove, Photo Collection, National Library, ACT. Clyde River and Batemans Bay Historical Society. Stephen Dunn and his history group, History of Batemans Bay and District, Past and Present, which is found on Facebook.